Hello, my wonderful second graders. Today is Wednesday, May 20th, and we're going to start today with a little activity that relates back to the story we read yesterday, Pheasant and Kingfisher. And I want you to think about that story, and we are going to do a little sorting event. We are going to compare on the events from Pheasant and Kingfisher and think about what is real, what is realism, and what is fantasy. And I've made a chart, and I wish we were together at school and I could hear your answers, but I do want you to participate from home as best as you can. I want you to think about where each event would go. Would it go under realism or would it go under fantasy? And before we do that though, I want you to think about, why would Mrs. Mickelson want me to learn this? Because every time I teach you a specific reading skill or strategy, there's a reason I'm doing that. So why would I be teaching you about fantasy and realism? Why do you think a reader should recognize those things? Well, the answer is, it's good as a reader to read all different genres of literature. First of all, it makes you a more well-rounded reader. But recognizing fantasy and realism also helps you as a reader because it helps you think about what you're reading, and you ask questions as you read, and you think, could this really happen? Or did the author want me to just kind of go into another world while I'm reading? You know, books can take you places, and that's why sometimes it's really great to read a fantasy book, because it can just take you away from real life and take you on a whole new adventure somewhere new, and take you to somewhere you could never go in real life. So reading just opens a whole world of possibilities for you. So what we're going to do today is think about realism and fantasy. I'm going to read something that happened in the story, and I want you at home to think about where I should place that event. Should I place it under the realism category or the fantasy category? So here is the first one. Men have powers. Remember in the story, Book and Bered had some powers that they used. That is fantasy. I hope you said fantasy for that one. How about this one? Men set up camp. Do you remember that? At the end of the day, they needed a place to stay. Could that really happen, or is that fantasy? Did you say realism for that one? Yes, men could really set up camp. How about this one? People fight over what belongs to someone. Is that realism or fantasy? For people to fight over what belongs to someone. The answer for that is realism. People have been doing that for many generations, fighting over what belongs to someone. How about this one? This happens at the very end. Enemies turn to stone. Did you say fantasy? I bet you did. That's definitely fantasy. That couldn't really happen. How about this one? Two men go hunting. Realism or fantasy? That's definitely realism. That could really happen. How about this one? Men make spears out of bamboo. Is that just fantasy, or could that really happen? Men make spears out of bamboo. That's probably not something you have ever done, but people really could do that. So that goes under realism. And how about this one? Arms turn into wings. That's definitely another fantasy. And two men become birds and fly away. another fantasy. Sometimes we wish we could do that. Wouldn't that be exciting? But that's just fantasy for two men to become birds and fly away. So when you read, it's good for you to read all different kinds of stories, some with realism, some with fantasy, some with both, and be a well-rounded reader. Now today we're going to talk about sequencing. And here is what sequencing is. Sequencing is retelling events in the order that they happened. Now, you always know when I want to teach you something, I want you to understand why. So the question you probably have is, why does this help me as a reader? And the answer is, it helps you make sense of how events unfold in your reading. So how the events play out. But it also helps you as a writer, because then you can create an order that makes sense in your writing, and it makes you a better writer. So remember yesterday when I read the story, I told you to think about the order of the events in the story. And if what I'm asking you to do today is a little bit tricky, you might want to go back to yesterday's video and hear the story again. And that's okay. That's why it's recorded for you. You can access it at any time. So you might want to hear the story again. I'm looking at your matrix, and I need you to get your distance learning reading packet. The matrix tells you to cut apart the sentence strips on page 9 of your reading packet. And then it says to use page 10 to paste the strips in the order that they happened. So you are going to do some sequencing. And it says you may need to watch Tuesday's video again, like I already said to you. So here's how this will work. Here are your strips that you're going to cut out. And then you turn to page 10. And you should have a glue stick from when you picked up all of your school supplies. If there was not one in your school box, I put one in there because I knew you would need it for this task today. So here is page 10. It says use this page to paste the sentences from page 9 in the order that they happened. And I have an idea for you that I think you would appreciate. After you cut them all apart, think about what happened first and what happened last. And I would lay those out first on page 10. Also, lay everything out before you do any of the gluing. Remember how we did that all the time in school? If there was something to glue, and Mrs. Mickelson would always say, lay it out first, and I'll come around and check it, and then tell you to glue. Well, today I can't come around and check it, but you can lay them all out and then reread them in the order that you put the sentence strips, and then you'll know if you think you're right or not. So what I want you to do right now is look at page 9. And I want you to look at page 9, and I want us to read all of these together. So are you ready? Pause the video if you're not. I want you reading it with me. Okay, here we go. Book, and Barid turned into birds and flew away. Now remember, these are all mixed up. Book, and Barid hunted, sang, danced, and made spears from bamboo. Book, and Barid made camp where bamboo spears grew. Read the next one with me. Book, and Barid painted themselves. Continue. Their enemies came after them with spears. Book, and Barid used their powers, and Najalambo warned them that people were angry. So remember what I said. I'm going to repeat the directions. Cut them all apart. It's pretty easy to think of what happened first. And put that at the top of page 10. Think of what happened last. Put that at the bottom of page 10. and then lay your other strips out in the order that you think they happened. When you're all done, before you glue, read all of them. Make sure it makes a lot of sense because you might have made a mistake. And if you read them before you use your glue stick, that will help. One thing you could do is if you space them out a little bit and put an arrow in between each one, it would kind of be like a flow map. So you could add an arrow in between each one. And I want to see your work. And you know how I'm going to see your work? I'm going to go on Seesaw. And I have already made the activity for you. I want you to open up the activity that says Pheasant and Kingfisher 5-20. I believe it says 5-20. And it tells you the directions. When you're all done, you're going to click Add Response. You are going to take a picture of page 10, which won't be blank like this one. It will have all your sentences in the order they happened. And then I want you to click the microphone and I want you to record yourself reading all those sentences from the story. So that's your assignment for today. And now let's talk about math. Let's start math by reviewing the work you did yesterday. So these are the answers you should have. For number 1, 60 minutes is 1 hour. Number 2, 30 minutes is 1/2 hour. Number 3, 60 seconds is 1 minute. Number 4, a digital clock uses only numbers to show time. And number 5, an analog clock has an hour hand and a minute hand to show time. Now, do you notice number 4 starts with just the word a? And number 5 says and. Remember what I taught you about using the word and? When and is used, you know that the next word starts with a vowel. So you could tell for sure if your answer was right, because the only choices that would make sense for these two would be digital clock or analog clock, and definitely the one starting with a vowel would go there. But you know the answer makes sense anyway, because an analog clock has the hour hand and a minute hand to tell time, but just wanted to remind you about using the word and. Concept check. Tell what time is shown. You should have 10 o'clock, 4:30, and 2 o'clock. Okay, next you draw the hands on each clock and write the time. Now I want you to look very carefully at how you drew the hands. Make sure that your minute hand to show 8:30, which is 8:30, goes right through the number, right through the 6. The hour hand should be halfway between the 8 and 9 here, and halfway from the dot to where the numbers are. For number 10, 11 o'clock, your long minute hand should go right through the 12. Your short hour hand points to the 11, and it's short. For 1:30, you should have written 1:30. You should have your long minute hand going right through the number, and a short hour hand is halfway between the 1 and the 2. It shouldn't be on the 1 or the 2, halfway, right in the middle, since the minute hand has gone halfway around. Write the time. 7:30 is 7:30, and this digital clock shows 1 o'clock. Now remember, I helped you a little bit with your brain builders. I got you started on this one. His first class should be 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock, second class 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock, and remember that third class is only 1.5 hours long, so that should be 11 o'clock to 12:30. So your answer is 12:30. For the test practice question, the class bell rings every 30 minutes. The first one rings at 8:30. What time will the fourth bell ring? Remember I drew the 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 down here? You should have filled in 8:30, 9 o'clock, 9:30, 10 o'clock. So 10 o'clock is the correct answer. Okay, now we are ready to begin lesson 4. We are now going to tell time to the quarter hour. We're going to talk a little bit about that word quarter. Here's your essential question. How do I use and tell time? That's what we've been working on and we'll continue to work on. Okay, first let's talk about what quarter means. I have a circle, and if I want to fold the circle in half, that means I am folding it into 2 equal parts. So let me open it back up. You can see a line here dividing the 2 equal parts of my circle. We could think of this like a clock. Put the 12 right up at the top and the 6 at the bottom. So 2 equal parts. So if there are 2 equal parts, this is 1/2 and this is 1/2. Does that make sense? That should make sense. Okay, now I'm going to take my circle and I'm going to fold it again. But this time I'm going to make one more fold. Now, how many equal parts do I have? Now I have 4 equal parts. So this is 1/4 of my circle. This is 1/4 of my circle here. This is 1/4. And this is 1/4. Now, another way to say 1/4 is to say 1/4. 1/4. So, think about how many quarters are in a dollar. You know how we count 25, 50, 75, a dollar? There are 4 quarters in a dollar. Have you ever been to a sporting event that was broken into quarters and it was the end of the first quarter? That means 1/4 of the game is done. So, quarter is another way of saying 4th. So, to help you understand that in terms of telling time, let's think about the clock. Here we have the 12 and the 6, so what would be right here? I hope you said 3. And what would be right across or opposite of the 3? I hope you said 9. Okay, so boys and girls, that this is your clock. We know there's a 1 and a 2 here, and a 4 and our 5, and our 7 and our 8, and then the 10 and the 11. So, as your minute hand moves around the clock, when it has started at the 12 and made it to the 3, it has gone 1/4 or 1/4 of the way around, just like back here, how we have our quarters. Then when it has gone from the 12 all the way to the 6, it is halfway around, just like when we learned half past. Then if your minute hand has gone from the 12 to the 3 to the 6 and all the way to the 9, now there's only this much left. 1/4, right? That's why we call that quarter 2 or quarter till. So let's look at that in terms of this clock. So now it is 9 o'clock. When it becomes 9:15, we can call that quarter past. Because you can think of, oh, that's the amount that the minute hand has traveled, 1/4 of the way around the clock. So as it keeps moving and it's getting closer to 10 o'clock, but not quite yet, we could call this quarter to 10 or quarter before 10, because to get to 10 o'clock, that's all that's left is those 15 minutes right there. So if I'm going to set my clock to 6:15, I want you to think about where you think I'm going to set it. 6:15. Think about that. Think in your mind. Is this what you were thinking? That would be 6:15. It was 6 o'clock, but then the minute hand moved 15 minutes or 1/4 of the way around the clock. So it is now 6:15. Okay, now think about what the clock should look like if it is 11:15. Is that what you pictured? 11:15. Now, let's pretend that it is 3:45. It's not quite 3 o'clock yet. It is 3:45. That would look like this. Now, this hour hand is almost on the 3. It's not quite there yet, so we can't say it's 3 o'clock yet. If you were going to tell time, you would not name the hour hand as 3. You would still say 2. It is 2:45, which is 3:45. Because in order to get it to 3 o'clock, that's all the minute hand has to do. So that's what we're going to do today. Please get your math packet, and we can do the Math in My World together. Okay, so this looks a lot like what I made, right? We're not going to worry about placing cubes like the directions say. I just want you to make your clock say the time that I tell you to have it say. I want you to make it 7:15. 7:15. Let's draw the minute hand first. Where would 7:15 be? Remember this? 1/4. So 1/4 would be to right here. So 7:15, right through the number, right past the 3. I'll make it a little darker. Right through the number, right through the 3. And we know it's already been 7 o'clock. It's a little bit later, so when we draw our hour hand, it's almost pointing to the 7, just a teeny bit past. So that would be 7:15, or 7:15. Okay, so second grade, we're going to do the guided practice part together. And I'm going to double check your matrix to make sure I have that right. It says you're going to do guided practice numbers 1 through 3 in your math packet and tell a family member your answer to the talk math question. So we'll do this top part together, and then you'll do 1, 2, and 3 on your own and the talk math. So here we go. You can show time to the 1/4 hour. There are 15 minutes in a 1/4 hour. And that makes sense because 15 plus 15 plus 15 plus 15, if you added them all up, 5, 10, 15, 20, you would keep the 0, give the 2 to the 10s, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So it takes 4 parts of 15 to add up to 60 minutes. So 1/4 hour is 15 minutes. There are 4 1/4 hours in an hour. So this says 1 o'clock. So you need to trace the numbers for 1 o'clock. Now this says 1/4 and you can see the yellow is representing what the minute hand has traveled. So this is 1:15. 1/4 is always going to be 15 for your minutes. Now we go another 1/4, so now we're half past, and this is going to be 1:30. Now they have written 1/4 till 2. I usually say 1/4. It means the same thing. So now we have our hour. It's already gone past 1, so we know it's 1. And then we have 15 on the 3, 30 on the 6, and you remember what the 9 always is? It's always 45. Get those memorized, and then you'll always know, hey, minute hand on the 3 is 15. Hey, minute hand on the 9 is 45. Hey, minute hand on the 6 is 30. You'll always know it. So here's your job. Just 3 problems at the bottom. And do the talk math. Tell someone in your family your answer to the talk math question. and I will be back tomorrow. I hope you have a wonderful Wednesday.